The attack and encounter at Pearl Harbor. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese fleet surprised the Pearl Harbor naval base with an attack. The attacking planes came in two waves, leaving 2,403 people dead, 188 destroyed planes, and a crippled fleet with 8 damaged or destroyed battleships. 68 of the deceased were civilians. The attacking Japanese fleet consisted of 49 bombers, 40 torpedo planes, 51 dive bombers, and 43 fighter aircraft. The U.S. fleet was surprised when they saw a frontal attack coming towards them. The Japanese fleet, however, did not use a frontal attack strategy. They first had a diversion before making a main attack. The Pearl Harbor base itself was finished in 1911. By 1916, Pearl Harbor was the headquarters of a naval district and subsequently became the command center for the Pacific Fleet. There were many people, though, that still made it off of the boats and remember the attack on Pearl Harbor.
The attack came, it was like going 180 degrees from a serene setting in which we were functioning to being attacked by the Japanese Imperial Navy. Of course, it was a Sunday. I was preparing to go to church.
I was still in bed up in the big barracks.
I was in the washroom and somebody said the Japanese are here, and I said, "No, come on."
But immediately we heard general quarters, man your battle stations.
I hightailed it down, went outside the doors, looked up, and here were these planes just barreling over the field. And immediately we knew that we were at war.
We couldn't get at the ammunition. It was down below deck. And we took 7 torpedoes and 3 bombs. And by that time it was pretty much flooded out, I'm sure, and lost most of our sailors down there. And I kind of got half thrown off and half jumped off and swam over to Fort Island.
We set up, I would say, between 6 and 10 50 caliber machine guns. A low-flying plane flew over, machine gunned us, perturbed me a little bit. I picked up a couple rocks and threw it at him. It didn't do any good, but didn't bring him down. But
the attack, it is said, was provoked due to the fact that the U.S. cut Japan's resources before the attack. Even though the Japanese attacked heavily, all of the aircraft carriers went through the attack unscathed. One of the inventions created due to the attack on Pearl Harbor was the atomic bomb. The group of people in charge of making the atomic bomb was named the Manhattan Project. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb was tested. At approximately 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, a U.S. B-29 bomber dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima, instantly killing around 800,000 people. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, causing the deaths of 40,000 more. The effects of the bombings were devastating. The predicted Japanese surrender, which came on August 15th, just 6 days after the detonation over Nagasaki, ended World War II. Another event happening after the attack of Pearl Harbor during World War II was the Holocaust. The Holocaust was a genocide in which approximately 6 million Jewish people were killed by Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime and its collaborators. The main way Hitler killed the Jews was by gassing them. There were 6 main camps that were committed to the gassings. 90% of the Jewish people living in Poland were killed in the Holocaust. As a whole, over 40% of the total Jewish population were murdered in the Holocaust. Most of the men off base giving orders didn't know the attack was coming until it was gone. One of the original plans for the Japanese was to have submarines go under the base and sneak attack it from below. Almost immediately after the attack, the United States joined World War II on the opposite side of the Japanese. possibly being the factor on the U.S. winning World War II. The total of the death casualties were from a total of 44 states. Before the invasion of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese invaded China. Along with Pearl Harbor, the air stations at Hickam, Wheeler, Ford Island, Kanohi, and Iwo Field were all attacked by the Japanese. One of the most famous quotes spoken by a Japanese admiral was, "I feel all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with terrible resolve."
It took 2.5 hours. It took 2 different waves, and the damage was fantastic.
Maybe we were subject to our own propaganda. We were told that Pearl Harbor was impregnable.
We never talked much about Pearl Harbor. We just felt that we had to fight a war.
Here you're 19 years old and people are shooting at you. Bombs are falling. Your life has changed. You know it's never going to be the same again.
We were, in effect, we were thrust into history. We didn't ask for it, but we suffered through it. The freedom that we enjoy is not to be taken for granted because it was paid for by the lives of many, many young men. It is our most precious asset.
It's the hand of the Lord that directed me, because there's so many things happened to me during the war that I can't put an answer to. I dedicate my life to my country. It was my duty, and I'm proud of it.
I retired in 1960, got into the civilian world. It was real nice because I came to a job of the Naval Air Test Center, and I've been in Maryland ever since. When I became the president of the Association of Pearl Harbor Survivors, the first thing I says, look, there's no Navy, Army, or Marines. I says, if you're in the organization, you are a Pearl Harbor survivor.
Even more lives were lost at war due to the U.S. joining World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor. General Yamamoto, who was the Japanese leader of the attack, was even friends with many Americans. The U.S. joining World War II on the opposite side of the Nazis helped the anti-Nazi efforts by not only giving all the U.S. troops to the anti-Nazi efforts, but it also gave them lots of confidence, because the United States military was feared in many countries. Even after the attack, there were many protests that followed. Many citizens opposed the idea of the U.S. forces going into World War II. The United States, however, won World War II. The protests against World War II were called the anti-war movement. During the 1930s, a nationwide student movement developed that, at its peak, involved hundreds of thousands of students. At the University of Washington, student activists in the American Students' Union organized protests, meetings, and anti-ROTC campaigns to such an extent that the dean of the university handed their information over to the FBI. Another main subject of protest was the American-Japanese internment. The internment of Japanese Americans in the United States was the forced relocation and incarceration during World War II of between 110,000 and 120,000 of people of Japanese ancestry who lived in the Pacific Coast in camps near the interior of the country. As you can see, there are many memorials for the 2,403 people that died in the unfortunate attack at Pearl Harbor. One of the everlasting effects of this attack was the United States being on the winning side of World War II. It is estimated that 671,278 soldiers died in World War II following the attack on Pearl Harbor. Although there were many losses, no one can tell how America would be right now without the encounter and attack at Pearl Harbor.